Alright, I've done a number of things with this project to bring it closer to construction drawings, and I'm going to try to share a few of those things. Hopefully it's not too confusing, and some of this will be redundant both to prior films and within the film itself, and that's why I'll try to go as rapidly as I can and be as clear as I can. This is the foundation plan in the final dimensions. I know this is an oddball dimension, but to get what we needed to do up here in terms of wall bracing, that was the bare minimum I could do it with. And I would have gone wider to like 16/8 to a coursing dimension, except we're squeezed by that window well here. And we're squeezed from going to the north by this window up here on the first floor. And while almost all of this requires your decisions and your judgments on things, a certain amount of this film itself is definitely for the benefit of the builder in the process. So at the foundation, this is what I normally show. These bars aren't required, but I normally show them. And I also show rigid insulation, 2 foot down and 2 foot horizontal, just because a person may as well for the cost. So, but you can sort this out with your contractor. But if these are definitely not going to be included, these reinforced bars, then I should know. And this is where the finished first floor works out with a couple options on these windows, which we'll discuss. But before I even really got started with putting the new sliding door over here and adjusting these windows to where I thought that Anderson would be able to supply them, the first thing I did, different from where we were, was the last plan that we had worked with. I had shown these sills a course or so lower than these sills, and I came to believe that that was an error, and I think we have to use those sills to dictate where these windows are placed. I show these windows at 60.5 and these new ones are at 60, so that should be doable. So that was the first thing I did, was adjust that sill so that it's in line with this, because I felt like that was too much of an error. A number of things then to cover with this particular slide, and in no particular order. So you go down 7.5 to the concrete patio, and that means you're going to be down 11.5. So I show them building another step over here, so you come up 2 5.5 or 6 inch steps to the laundry. That's over there. This is that 8-foot door, and right now I'm showing it centered on this wall on the inside. So there's basically 18 or 20 inches on either side of it. And then I have aligned the edges of these two doors. So those two are aligned there, and there's 1 foot 7.5 or so from the edge of the casing to the wall. So there were actually still a couple of errors. Hopefully those have been now corrected. Now this door is now centered on this wall with 19 inches on either side, and this margin is aligned with that, with the same 19 inches there. And there's the rest of the dimensions down through here. You can slide both of these a little bit west if you want, and we'll still be able to meet the wall bracing requirements. But otherwise, this is what I'm showing. And this west end was called out. I knew from my research that Anderson was not going to make, unless it's a custom order, they make a 3 foot wide and a 4 foot wide in these sliding windows. While they do make a stock picture window that is more narrow than 4 feet and wider than 3 feet, it doesn't look good with what I was working with. So I endeavored to get all of these 4 foot wide units to work up here on this west wall. And the 16 foot 4.5 was the bare minimum required to get these braced wall panels on these ends here. There are 2 different types of braced wall panels in the plan. These ones that are called portal frame hold down, PFH, and these require some special hold down pieces here. They're about $22 a piece, and right here. These continuous sheath portal frame wall bracing do not require any special hold downs, just the regular anchors. But any of this plywood that's nailed on these braced wall panels, these portal frame wall panels, and these wall panels here have to be nailed 3 inches on center, and you need to have double 2x4s on each side of those. So all of that's been accounted for in the framing plan that I've put together so far. With regard to the alignment of this, I have pushed it this way as far as I thought practical, in order to keep the clearance down here. And you can see that that's not quite on the corner, so I think this 2x4 needs screwed to this brick, and then your wall starts from there and goes up. At this corner here, I would use a mud in J and then just caulk that. A mud in J channel and then caulk that. There's the mud in J channel right here, and then you could just caulk that. I think that's going to be the neatest and cleanest look at that location. With regard to these required hold downs, 6 of them all together, they are this, and these require 5/8 anchor bolts into the foundation. They can be like 12 inches long, fit into those grouted cells. But the problem with these, they require these 5/8 inch machine bolts with a washer on the back side. And the way these are set up here, we have trouble. Here we can put the bolt all the way through this in the king and the little cripple stud, a long bolt all the way through all 3 of those. On this side it's fine. On this side though, we have troubles. So I think the best we're going to be able to do on this side, because I really don't want to move this one in another 1.5 inches, I think the best we're going to be able to do there is recess the washer head and leave the bolt out and make a hole in the OSB for that bolt head. Down here I looked at it a little differently, because we've got this door here. Again, you can use long bolts, 5/8 bolts this way down through all of these studs here. But this one up here, we've got the door. And so I think on this one, we're going to move the hold down 1.5 inches and just add an extra king stud on the back side of that door. Again, some of this is definitely for the builder. But it's critical because this was really a game of inches to get this in. These are the trusses now laid out at 2 inches on center, and I was not going to move this again. We were at 1410 on the depth, and this last truss is still 3/4 of an inch too far. So what I've done is I've just, that truss, I want the west side of that truss on the back side of this framing here, so that framing can be tied into that truss here. So I've moved everything out 3/4 of an inch, put some treated 1x behind these truss cords and some lag screws through that brick and into the framing to hold that last truss against the wall. And then all the plywood and your lookouts tie into this gable wall. So before I made those last changes, that one there, this is what the framing was looking like out here. I'll explain this briefly. Remember, the tops of the windows are now called out by that existing brick sill. And using this kind of wall framing, even though we don't need these big heavy headers, you're required to use at least 11¼ inch headers. So all the headers in the plan are the 11¼ inch headers. And the wall height is 8-foot standard studs with 2 plates at the top and a plate at the bottom for a net wall height of 8'4½". This end wall, the west wall, is framed across that whole west foundation. But the doors are only, their requirement is their rough opening is 6'10½". So this needs built down by 2 2x4s and a piece of 3/4 inch plywood, and then this one stays high just like it is. Maybe there's a 1/2 inch shim needs to be put in here to get that all aligned right. And all that will happen here is there will now be an additional king stud here, and that'll move over 1 1/4 inch. And maybe we do that on the west end as well. I really didn't want those that close together, but that may be the best option, is just to move this stud and that in 1.5 inches and then add one more stud at the end, and with long bolts going through and being able to be recessed in that last stud and go through the 2 main ones here. Because we were so tight with the 4 foot, 4 foot, and 4 foot in the required 16-inch wall bracing panels, we don't have room for a trimmer stud in here. But this is not holding that much, and you can use these little Simpson Parts header hanger 4s. They're probably $5 or $6 a piece, but use those there instead of any kind of trimmer stud or jack stud or whatever you want to call the one that's short in here in the metal cripple. And then I have all of this going up and tying into this roof framing here. I don't know whether you're going to have that last truss drop truss and then have these lookouts over top, but in any event we want to tie all that west wall framing into the truss framing. And then this is the north wall framing. That has changed by 3/4 of an inch. That's 2 foot 1 1/4 now. And again, you have that same where you have to build this down by 3 3/4 of an inch, this header for that door. With that door centered on that inside wall, this is what it is out here. So if this bothered you, if this asymmetry here bothered you more than you think the inside one will, we can shift that way. This next series just goes through some of the various developments within this. So first of all, I want you to be sure this middle window is not going to be available with the blinds between the glass like the sliding windows are. So perhaps you want to just make all of those sliding. And I would think for the purposes of symmetry you would just have them all sliding left or all sliding right. Or that remains a picture window. That is shown as a 20-inch unit over it with a continuous drip edge on top of this drip cap, wooden drip cap on top of this, or vinyl drip cap on top of this headpiece here. Kind of like this. And you can see that it is a game of inches and we are really close here with these 4 foot wide windows. Now, and that's what I'd like to see you use. But we need that 4.5, so these are 5 inches. So I've made these casings wide like this center because it didn't look right with them not. And I've made these casings now 4.5 inches. The side, 4.5 and 4.5. And these are 5s with these heads 5.5 plus the drip cap. And then I was wondering if maybe we broke up that horizontal in the middle and made it mold these two windows together, had these two windows ship mold like this together. And if we do that, then it could actually be a little bit taller, where that's a 24-inch unit up here. I kind of like this look better where more of that verticality was emphasized rather than this. Rather than horizontal all the way across, I kind of prefer, I want to maintain the band across but just not the heavy line, so I kind of prefer something like this. And this is shown, there's a few more issues to discuss, and it's with regard to this fascia board here that's continued from here, this frieze board here that's continued from here, and it needs to actually be boxed out a little bit so that it is in front of this door, which doesn't reach to it all the way, so that we don't have a flush kind of condition there. So it has to come all the way out like that. And the alternative is just, having those doors, but that's only 2.5 inches that you're adding custom, and I can imagine that's pretty pricey for that little shift. This is probably the permutation I prefer here in terms of these windows. Of course the door is short, but that's just in terms of with the door shorter, but these windows like that. And while this outside mauling together, that detail is not too difficult, inside, if you look here, because those jambs come all the way into the casing, you have to make a special maul cover to join those two windows with a wood look, like this gray piece here, something like that. But when you start trying to maul the whole, all 5 of these windows together, or 4 of these windows together, it gets a little complicated, but it can still work. But I kind of like them almost separate like this. This is the 20-inch high. This is a 24-inch high. Separate on the inside, and these two joined on the outside. You have switches over by that door for as many. You could even have 3 over here if you needed them or wanted them. And a similar thing over here. And that is with the windows completely joined with no gap between them. These two here. These next clips show this window in various arrangements. I don't particularly care for this one at all, mainly because of these mauls don't have a relationship to that one up there. So I don't like that one where all 4 of them are endeavored to be joined. I like this one a little bit more. but actually I think that's probably the best solution on the interior. But that is really up to you, and is one of the things that you'll have to decide. In this last bit then, reviewing these windows one last time on this west facade. This is where these two were joined with this factory ship joined with a 24-inch high transom above. This is where we maintain this steady horizontal line, and this is above that. Little transom is above it. That's 20 inches high. A similar thing, except we have a mold cover here, and these drip edges stop at the edge of that window, and this vertical look is emphasized. And this is probably a 24-inch window shown up here. The main decision whether you want that center window to be a picture unit or sliding, all sliding like this. That's the main decision you have to make, in addition to the height of this transom window, which is going to depend on how we join it or how that's seamed together there. I don't think we're going to entertain custom door heights unless you tell me to. I won't even bother with that. So again, we've managed to get all the standard Anderson window sizes in there. With a few last minute decisions on your part, we can have those costed, and I can complete the construction drawings for this. So hopefully this was more helpful than confusing and not too boring, and I will talk to you presumably quite soon. Thanks very much.